you get your customers to prioritize their challenges.
Welcome to the Howie and Beastmode podcast, where we discuss all things business, including growth, strategy, and execution, as well as personal and professional development. Let's join Howie and Beastmode in conversation.
Maybe I would have some perspective or some prayer or something. I talk to business mentors, but sometimes it's kind of weird to tell them, well, you know, God gave me this idea, but I feel like it's too big. And so having somebody with I guess God's perspective would be helpful. I haven't really got a lot of that, if that makes sense.
Definitely makes sense for sure. Well, I'll tell you what, Jordan, you want to open up in a prayer real quick?
Yeah, let's do that.
Cool.
Father God, we're just so grateful for today. God, we just love you so much. Thank you for all that you're doing in us and through us. God, we know that business is your idea. God, and we're so grateful for the opportunity to work and the purpose and the plans that you have for us in our work today. God, we just submit this time to you. God, we just ask for your wisdom, supernatural wisdom and insights. God, as we just are we're looking to hear from you. So give us ears to hear, give us clear minds. And God, we just pray for favor and blessings, God, on Angela and all that she's doing, God. We just give you praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Cool. Well, I think the best way for us to really think about, providing some thoughts and some ideas, is really to do a lot of discovery first. So I think just tell us everything you can about, your current situation, whatever you want to share in terms of family, if that's relevant at all, the business that failed, the new idea, just kind of give us some good history and some good context. And then, we'll ask some more questions, but however you want to structure, that's going to be just fine.
Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of all over the place, so you might have to rein me in if I get too out there.
No
I'm a little ADD with OCD. It's a great combo. So, yeah, like I said, I had started a business serving people with disabilities. I got a contract with the state of Texas. That's what I went to school for. That was my, educational background. And that was going well. And one day, I asked God, I was like, this is great and all, but I really want to do something big. And he gave me an idea, the name of the company, and I thought, oh, that sounds great. But once I started picking it apart, I thought, wow, this is over my head. I don't know. I mean, I've done years of research on it, and I found a coder for it. It was basically applying a solution to the problem that I'd seen working with people with disabilities, getting them jobs. There isn't technology available for hourly works jobs, matching the employer to the job seekers. So he gave me this idea, kind of laid it out, but then it was like, wow, well, this is, it just seems so overwhelming. I don't even know how to start. So I started working on a business plan. I applied for a business plan competition, didn't win. Companies that sold popsicles, all kinds of juice companies, weird things like that. The one I was like, wow, I'm here trying to get people jobs.
But
I guess
me, I understand.
Obviously they had something I didn't. I wasn't trying to be bitter, but I was like, wow, so that was a dead end. I applied for a grant, didn't get that.
All right, a few quick questions.
Sure.
Because you're causing some nice curiosity along the way, which is exactly what I was hoping for. So what was your degree?
A rehabilitation study. So it's vocational rehabilitation, rehabbing people in their careers and their jobs.
Rehabilitation. And then what's the second word after that?
Studies, rehabilitation studies, rehabilitation counseling.
Got it.
It's kind of like what they do for veterans, but for non-service people. So for non-veterans, I specialize with students with autism, high school students that are about to exit school, and they typically don't go to college. So I get them entry-level jobs like movie theaters, restaurants, like I said, entry-level jobs, usually their first job.
Okay, cool. Hey, are you okay if we record this, by the way, and if we post it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So rehabilitation studies and counseling, kind of related stuff. So a variety of career coaching. Okay. How does the disabilities factor in there?
Well, they typically don't have the ability to do all of the job aspects, so I have to negotiate their position, meaning they may do some parts of the job, but not all of them. So I'll coach them and get them as best as I can for the position, but they typically are not able to just get out and get a job on their own. They need some assistance, some accommodations. They might some modifications as far as the job for them to be able to actually do it.
So I heard autism. Is that the main one? Is there other ones too?
That's what I specialize in: intellectually disabled, autism, on the spectrum. But I've worked with everything from amputees to people with mental health issues, you name it, brain injuries, really everything.
Got it. Okay. And so you've been doing this for how long?
Since 2010. And then I stopped about 2 years ago to do another business right before COVID hit. We had started that and then that failed. Yep. So now I'm back to doing my contract business, but I'm having to start off, kind of rebuild that customer pipeline again. So
where do you find them?
I go out to the counselors with the state and tell them, I have spots open. You have people that, think would work well with me. So I just go out and ask them for business.
State agencies, you said?
Right. Mm-hmm. It's the Texas Workforce Commission. Most people know it by the unemployment office. They have a special branch that deals with people with disabilities they have to provide these services under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Okay. Got it. So did you know that we have show names?
What's a show name?
So we do a podcast, and so we have like a show name. So I don't want to say this without asking you. So you apparently don't know that. Okay. So my name is Howie, which makes sense because it's Brian Howard, right? Jordan's name is Beastmode. So it's Howie and Beastmode is the show. And so we have a podcast we've been doing for over a year, and I think over 100 episodes, maybe something like that. But anyway, I named him that because it was just cool. I just made it up literally as we're about to hit record on our first episode. So anyway, if you hear me call him that, that's what that means. It's just a little pet name. We have these little fun names. So Howie and Beast Mode. So anyway, so Beast Mode, any questions for Angela so far up to this point in her history?
No, I'm still letting it formulate in my mind. I can be sometimes too early to jump, and so I'm just kind of letting it slow play. So keep going for me.
I love that. I love that. No, I think that's great. I think, I think she deserves to be heard. And I think the Holy Spirit will guide us if we do a good job, like letting her talk and stuff. All right. So people with disabilities, there's a market. Okay. So it's a demand by the Americans with
as you're thinking, let her keep unfolding.
Yeah, keep going. What else?
Well, yeah, that's kind of the first part. That's how I got to, like I said, it was doing good, but there's really no way to scale. I can't hire people to do what I do. The people want to work with me. I'm the one with the credentials. It's kind of like, a doctor or somebody. They can't really farm that business out. There's just no way to scale it. So, but it was successful as much as it could be. But like I said, I asked God for something bigger, and I feel like He gave me an idea, but I feel like I've kind of given up on it. And now I'm circling back around to it because the way the economy is, as you know, people can't find hourly workers. I mean, they're having to modify their hours of operation because they don't have staff available. And so there's a number of reasons why that is, but I have a really good understanding of the hourly worker because I've been finding them jobs for the last decade. And so I saw that there's problems as far as technology, as far as what's available. We're still using, I call it like horse and buggy. We're putting help wanted signs outside. Like that doesn't work. Help, like you're hiring for what? What hours? How much are you paying? What do you need them to do? So the business that I want to do is to have a technology solution to match those people to those open positions, but that takes custom coding, which is a lot of money.
I've actually done this before, by the way. I started a website. I took 3 years in development, spent $80,000 to develop it. So I wrote my own business specs. I mean, I've done literally I've done a web application startup like you're talking about before.
Was it HTML? Like, what did you use to code it?
We used Drupal, which is an open source framework, and it's coded on PHP. So let's get to technology in a second. But I can, who knows, might be more relevant than I thought going into this. Okay, some more questions. When you say, you have to build your own pipeline, so you're basically reaching out to agencies and doing this stuff. Is that enough to generate a self-supporting income, like a reasonable income if you have a good pipeline?
Yeah, I had built up to about 160K a year, but that was me working Christmas. That was me working a lot. Because I'm kind of all or nothing. I really work hard so I got so much business that, I had too much business, honestly. I just, I couldn't handle it all. And so then it started to kind of fade because I wasn't able to really provide the level of service that I was in the beginning to get that business. And so then I got burnt out. And then I just, like I said, went in another direction. So I'm hoping I can build that up to fund my new business. But now I'm worried that I'm going to miss the wave, so to speak, because now what if other people are thinking, now they realize
no, you're fine. You didn't miss out, believe me. I mean, it's just like, how many places do really well, but they all sell tacos? I mean, there's business there for sure out there. And plus your business is kind of hard to do, requires specialization. So, okay. Got it. Interesting. So before I do want to hear about the new business idea, but before I do that, I'm always interested in seeing about scaling what we know works as at least a thought. Okay. Are you sure with little tiny bits of oversight that you couldn't have a staff that does this? Because 160, let's just cut that in half, right? I mean, even if it was like 80, right? What if you had 7 people across Texas, right? And that's like $500,000. I mean, what, are you sure you can't scale this with really responsible, smart, educated people?
Well, did I mention I'm a tad controlling?
Fair enough. You're a perfectionist. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
So I got my files, I have error-free audits. You have to turn this paperwork to get paid. It has to be perfect. And if they find any error in this paperwork, you have to pay the money back. So it's kind of like I said, kind of like a doctor. It's like, you leave that in the hands of someone, and it's so, I mean, if you would see the state's paperwork, I don't know if you've ever dealt with the state, but it's intense. And so that's where, my attention to detail, I call it OCD just as a joke, but I really am meticulous. And so that has helped me in that aspect. But when I did try to hire people. And when I did, I had to redo their work because it wasn't up to par. I couldn't maintain that same level of, error-free work, because you're audited. You have to be literally, I mean, I've got paperwork all over my desk right now. It's like, there's nothing but check marks,
Is it physically paper? Like it's actual paper you're filling out, pieces of paper?
Mhm.
Okay.
The same state that implemented a paperwork reduction act literally creates more forms and paperwork to do than anybody I've ever seen. But
Is there no way to, and is there literally not a way to use like Adobe or DocuSign or some kind of product and have it digital?
I don't know if they allow it. It says on the paperwork, handwritten signature. So,
Yeah.
and like I said, they're really prehistoric when it comes to,
Okay.
making things efficient, like their paperwork. They're like way, I
Yeah.
mean, they literally still do faxes.
Oh my gosh.
Because the information is protected under HIPAA. So I have to either send an encrypted email or I have to fax it or snail mail it, because if I just email it over without encryption, I could lose my contract because the information is sensitive. And so I hire people, and that became even a bigger headache, because
Yeah.
they just, even if I paid someone, I mean, if I got it backed up to that, I mean, I could probably find somebody with that at that level for $80,000 to do it.
Let me ask you a question. And I'm sorry that I'm getting excited because I'm a little ADD as well. But let me bounce in with a question and then I'll bounce out, and then Beast Mode may have a question or you may have some more comments too. So the question I have is it possible that we could steal somebody from schools who already handles this type of clientele and pay them 30% more, but get somebody who has a lot of experience already doing teaching and therapy in this area, or hire kids out of school that are top performers in this type of, not necessarily your exact degree. I have a theory that the teacher population has a subclass of people that could also do it. And if you get like very high, like honor students or just below that, they could be meticulous type situation. So I don't know. I mean, I just wonder, I feel like this could be a multi-million-dollar business in under 5 years if you scaled it. But the type of scaling you're talking about is things like forms that are filled out with an iPad. And not all this, by the way, some of this is not coding, okay? But like your people go through a certain amount of training, number one. Then they use iPad forms that have drop downs and certain fields. The fields themselves are very clear. They know how to ask the questions and fill it out, right? And then those come, they hit submit and those come back to a main area. So we have those. Of course, it could all be encrypted. But I'm just saying, and some of this might require a little bit of, I would call this using off-the-shelf software like SharePoint, Microsoft SharePoint, more than necessarily raw coding. You don't ever code something if it already exists out there. You just reuse, right? That's what I did with part of my website. So, I mean, I spent a total of $125,000, 3 years of work, and I have, over 6 years into this project. It didn't end up working out, but I learned all about project management and software development and functional specs. They said I wrote the best functional specs that they've ever seen, and I wasn't even a technical person. So I am good at this. And I'm telling you, there's software out there that can help you manage workflows and receive, get paperwork filled out. It's all encrypted, and it's never not encrypted in transport. By the way, I'm in the cybersecurity industry as well, so I know something about security. So what do you think about, I mean, is your new idea really, what is the new idea, and is it as sure of a thing as just quadrupling yourself?
Well, the new idea is what I was looking at for the coding.
Okay.
This business, Hire One Disability Services is the name of it. Like I said, I just got so burnt out because I tried to hire people and it didn't work out. I wanted to be able to scale it, but it just, it almost seemed impossible trying to train someone so niche with enough left over that I'm still going to make because for the risk that I take, because like I said, if there's an error, they have 3 years to audit. If there's an error and they come back, like one person I hired, and he said he was out there coaching the person. This person got a job at Walmart, and Walmart requires like 20 hours of learning once you get there, right? You gotta learn how to operate the baler, even though you don't even use it, but that's just something. And then I found out later when I talked to the consumer, because basically he had lied on his timesheet saying he was out there helping the guy, and he wasn't. And so I was just, because they have to be, working out in the field. And so you just take people's, word for things. And it really upset me that somebody would just, lie and put on their time card.
Which person was dishonest, your client or your employee?
My employee.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was like, wow, how am I gonna keep my eye on, I gotta go back and redo their work. And I don't know. It's just, I don't know if you've ever hired employees, but it was really, it was disappointing. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, I have over 20 years of management experience, so I do understand.
Yeah. So a lot of people that I talk to that do small businesses, like they hire people and they're like, you know what, it was more of a headache to try to get them to actually do the work. So I'll just do it myself. And that's where I found myself, because like I said, the quality really has to be there for my name, one, and for two, for the money. So, but I'm reapplying for that same contract. Like I said, I still have my website up for that. It's just a static website, informational, for more for marketing purposes, because my competitors are really small like me, and they don't even have websites other than the major competitors like Easter Seals and Goodwill. Most of the competitors in this space are nonprofit, but they have so many other hats that they wear. This is just one source of income for them. So I originally started out with Easter Seals as a subcontractor. They were giving me 60 to 70% of these government payouts, and I was happy with that. But then they saw how much money I was bringing in, and they decided to decrease my commission, and that's why I got my own contract. So but then you got to deal with all the compliance with the contract, all the training, just dealing with the state. It's difficult to manage, but not impossible, but it has its ups and downs. The good thing is the state always pays. You bill them, they pay. If they don't pay in 30 days, they give you interest. So it hasn't been all bad, but so yeah, like I said, I kind of got burnt out on that. I started another business with my best friend right before COVID happened. That failed. So now I'm back.
What was that business?
Guess. Just take a wild guess. Just one guess.
Before
Both
COVID?
of y'all have to guess one, huh?
Before COVID?
Right before COVID, me and my best friend opened a business.
Probably like hospitality or something, some kind of a catering or.
Nope. Jordan, you guess.
Coffee shop.
Nope. You'll never guess in a million years. Used car dealership.
Okay.
I had before
That's
college.
not that ironic.
Well, before college, I worked at a auto prime lender, and I worked for CarMax. So I always wanted to flip cars as like my retirement job, like instead of houses. But we decided to do it, and then COVID happened. They're like, oh, y'all can't be open, and we didn't even have an inventory. And then we had to be, I mean, as you know, the auto industry right now is just really suffering. So we just decided to close shop. So I put not too much. I think we put between 5,000 to 10,000 each. We didn't take out loans or anything like that. And so both of my businesses have been debt free. And so that one was just basically just a big K1 or K2, whatever it is, loss. So that's buried. And so now I'm going back to my contract business, and like I said, trying to maybe see how I can redo the other job, the other business that I wanted to do, which is, that's what the coding comes in. That's like an online, kind of like a matchmaker service for job seekers and employers for hourly jobs. So that one is the big dream. Like I said, I feel like God gave me and showed me all of the pieces to it, but it's just so big, you know, it's going to be outside of me. Like I can't do it all on my own. And I applied for a business plan competition. I applied for a grant. I didn't get any of that. And so now what do I do?
Well, Beastmode, you're smiling. What's up?
Yeah, it sounds like something God would do. You know, why would he give you an idea and then you just run off and do it on your own? It doesn't sound like it's his idea, you know. God gives us these ideas and then puts things inside of them that requires us as pursuers of Christ and the idea that it's only going to work his way. And so, yes, normal individuals in your circumstance with an idea similarly would go after these grants and would go do these and they would win, but not this one, because this one belongs to God. And the only way it's going to work is if it goes God's way. That's my take based upon somebody who's walking out something very similarly with a God idea. It only works his way. It just doesn't. If I can roll back real quick, I love this conversation. But when I used to work at a hospital, it's been almost 7 years now since I worked there. And when I did work there, one of my responsibilities was, and the hospital was in the Louisville ISD school district, and they have a program for their special education department where their juniors and seniors begin getting work experience. And many, I mean, almost everybody in the program would work in the hospital that I worked at in some capacity. And they would work all spectrums, from housekeeping to cafeteria to volunteer to greeting to running, anything that didn't require some type of specialty degree or anything like that for schooling. You know, these kids would learn in some capacity, shadow or answer phones, everything. And the reason why I'm telling you is, number one, because I truly love that. And again, they were getting experience in the hospital because it was a safe environment. I mean, the hospital just basically embraced these kiddos, and so they could basically be free to kind of to learn. And you have 500 employees who are, you know, keep an eye on them. But then, like, they would go get their real job, which is kind of like what you were talking about at Walmart. But one of the biggest ones they would go were Brinker restaurants. You know, they'd go get, and so they do a lot of the pre-shift work before customers came in to eat. So whatever that looked like to get the restaurant ready, you know, because a lot of it's meticulous. It's the same task over and over and over again. And so, but I know that there was a person just like you or similar to you who was over, you know, 10 kids. And then they had other, seemed like college age kids who were directly responsible for each individual student, who would basically shadow. And again, they would go through a portion of time where same thing, student, you watch me do the task, and then student, I'll do the task with you, student, I'll watch you do the task, and student, you do the task on your own. And I mean, that lasted for 2 months or whatever. And this was at the hospital. And then obviously once they graduated from that, then you go to Brinker. I'm telling you all that because, just like Brian said, there is a way to where somebody else is able to come in some capacity. I'm sure it's somewhat different, but it's very similar based on what I've heard you say and what I've witnessed with my eyes for 5 years while I worked there. So
yeah, that's exactly the type. I would get those students that were in that vocational training, service type learning. I would get those same kids in those program and then go get them paid jobs. So yeah, that's exactly. Now the state has came up with special services where you get them a work experience. Basically, you're finding a volunteer job, and the state pays you X amount for that. And so that's a new opportunity that's opened up that I could do, would be a little less of a headache, because paid jobs, when I find someone a paid job in a movie theater, I was working on Christmas Day there with them, making sure that they're on the job doing what, they needed to be doing, because I couldn't find subcontractors that wanted to go out to the movie theater on Christmas Day and work for $15 an hour. It just, but with the work experience with the volunteer, so that is another avenue for income stream. And I'll definitely revisit the idea of scaling that. I just feel like long-term, do I want to do this the rest of my life? No.
Yeah.
And I'm at the age now, I'm 47, where now it's like the years are really counting. Like it's not like, I'm fresh out of college and I just, so I feel like now's kind of, I even contemplated law school. I applied for I was going to take my LSAT, and then winter storm came and I was basically homeless for 4 months because my house was flooded. And so I put that off on the table, and I was like, well, I think that was more of just a backup of maybe I'll do this. Like I said, I'm kind of all over the place. So that's why I was hoping maybe talking to y'all, maybe y'all might have some kind of, what does the Holy Spirit say to y'all by talking to me? Is like, is the Spirit saying, wow, this girl's crazy, or what does he say?
So what's the coding required for?
So the new job, the new business, like I said, would be a matching service for hourly workers. So there really isn't a tool out there. The tools out there were originally designed for professional jobs. So they utilize word search optimization, right? Which is like a needle in the haystack. They don't say when the shift is. Sometimes it narrows down the location, but it doesn't say typically what the pay is, what the hours are. So basically it's a database, a searchable database, versus word search optimization, which is what's currently being used. Does that make sense? It's kind of the short version.
Yeah. So existing job sites don't provide the level of detail for hourly.
Right. So this is not replacing ATS. It's not replacing applicant tracking systems. It's not doing any of that back end. It's just all on the front end. So say like you want to buy a house, you put in certain search criteria, right? It's searching a database versus what you're clicking, what you're checking. And so it works the same way. So how you would find a car, a house,
Who's the customer?
The employers, franchises, so it's specifically for hospitality, food services, retail, entertainment, and non-skilled workers and light warehouse customer service.
And they're going to put this potential software that you're wanting to develop, they're going to put it on their website? Where are they putting it?
No, it's going to be like, it's its own, I can only pay for, right now I can't even pay for a website. It's going to be responsive. So it's going to be accessible on mobile or web desktop version, but eventually I have to get an app built, but I can't even think that far out. But it's so like right now you see a QR code, you scan it and it goes to their website typically to apply for a position, but it would be a QR code and they would direct them to their website with that place of business's job specifically for that location. So like you see DoorDash on the doors right now. It used to be MasterCard, Visa. Remember back in the day, I said we accept this type of payment. So that type of sticker in their storefront with the QR code that directs them to what positions are open. And the profile that job seeker builds, if it matches what they're needing, meaning the hours, the shifts, age limits, etc., then it'll direct them toward the website to apply, or it sends them a text message to come in during certain hours for interviews, or it sends them a specific interview time. Those are the three options that the text message would say.
So my number one concern / question is that your customer for your product would need their potential customer who they're wanting to fill a position to change the way they're currently looking for jobs. And that's okay. I mean, again, if this is how God's directing you, that's fine. But again, for me, I'm always concerned with my product, my service, whatever I'm putting out there. Is it communicating in the way that my customer is listening? Right. And so, for an example, there's a lot of businesses who will put content out, on certain social media platforms, but that is not how their customer is looking to engage with them and to listen to whatever they're putting out. And so they're just wasting time, energy putting it out there. And their customers who's trying to listen, they're not on the same wavelength. So that would be my only concern. So there would have to be an avenue to where, great idea for your customer, for the franchise, whoever who's looking for a job seeker. Now, how do I stimulate these job seekers to begin compiling this database so that my customers are now filling these jobs ultimately, right? So it's twofold.
Right. I'm selling to two people. Yeah, I'm selling to the job seeker, and I'm selling to the people that are going to be paying as the employers wanting jobs filled.
How are you selling it to the job seeker?
Well, I've came up with some free ideas.
Has to be free. If it's not free, the job seeker will not do it.
Well, it's free for them, but I'm saying
okay.
Free for me to get in front of the job seeker. So I've had this long-term working relationship with the Texas Workforce Commission. They have these job centers throughout Tarrant County. So my focus would be on North Texas first, right? Because you have the job seekers and employers, they have to be within, that's part of the foundation of how this works, is that because there's been studies to show that the closer that you live to your job, the more retention there is, right? Because people are not going to drive to Arlington for $15 an hour when they can drive 2 miles from home, for the same pay. Because entry level hourly positions are usually around the same pay. It's not a huge gap, but so with the Texas Workforce, have these job centers. Same thing at colleges. They have job centers where people go in there and get help with their resumes. So what I would like to do is to, once I have a product, is to go there with my service and then have them educate the job seekers on how to create a profile. That would be my first way to actually build a database for free of job seekers, and then take those job seekers to the employer and say, oh, look, all these people are looking for jobs.
We're a great place, I'm just because I deal with this population on a daily basis, is homeless. And the different, so like the Tarrant County Homeless Coalition and the Metro Dallas Homeless Alliance, City of Arlington, all these different municipalities are trying to find employers who are willing to hire at a certain rate with certain skills, and they need this conduit, to get in the middle. And then obviously you need something that's sifting and sorting through. I mean, unfortunately, there's, current stats are like 8,000 neighbors who are looking for employment. And this is just who's classified as, in the homeless sector, not necessarily, through what you're talking about, Workforce Commission and things like that. So,
yeah, entities like that. So there's a lot of, like the Texas Women's Center, they have I forget what they call it. It's a job readiness program. So they have job readiness programs in these nonprofits like Goodwill. They have kind of like a staffing service type thing. That's how they operate. So that was my idea, to try to get job seekers to build a database to try to reach them for free, because otherwise I would be having to pay for ads to get them signed up, right? And I don't have money for that. And I'm trying to stay under the radar because there's no barrier to entry. Anybody, career builder, Indeed, they can come and build the same thing once it's out
Nope.
there.
No, they can't. Not if it's God's, they can't.
Well, that's the part that scares me, is that once it's out there, anybody can, I can't get I could apply for a process patent, but that's tons of money.
Yeah.
Actually, I personally do agree that the big guys, if they saw this working, could come in like that. I feel like it's the truth can be two things at the same time. One of them could be, if obviously, yes, God could, give you the first mover advantage, and you could build critical mass so fast that it would make sense for them to go copy it. But I think you do want to just, it's not wrong that ZipRecruiter could do this, or Indeed could do this, or something like that as well. Both things are true, I think, at the same time.
Well, my ultimate plan would be to sell to one of those companies, like Recruit Ltd has bought, Indeed, not ZipRecruiter, Simply Hired. They purchased a lot of these. That's kind of like how companies are being built right now, to be bought, right, by a bigger company. And if the price is right, I'm all for it. I have other things that I want to do with this money, bigger things even than that. So, and that's why I feel like God gave me the idea. So how do I stay under the radar just long enough to make me to where I build it to where it would be something saleable, or,
the
big.
problem with some of these things, can you survive with very limited income for 24 months? Because to me, it's going to be something like that. It could be like, the problem with mine was, I did it nights and weekends over 3 years, and I burned $80,000 just to get it built. And then I spent like $13,000 on a launch party, and I spent like the rest of the 125 on marketing, and it didn't work. And I was like, it's a good thing I had a job where I could do nights and weekends, and my wife had a job as well, but I did lose it all. So there's two ideas here, right? So number one, maybe there's three ideas, but number one is turning what you do into a process, because I'm a big believer that as much as we love people who are Jedis like you, a Jedi is like a Star Wars term. Do you know about that?
I love Star Wars.
Okay. So as much as you might be Yoda always had Luke. Yoda taught Luke. And so, we know if you can make that, and maybe that was too much, not in terms of your income, but in terms of your work hours, maybe that should have been more like a 140, right? So what if you could make half of that times 5, or half of that time, whatever, you know what I mean? And you become more of like Yoda. We don't necessarily need Yoda on the front lines of battle, if Yoda can be training 12 disciples, right? So out of my current thought is like scaling and turning what you do into a process, right? And maybe there's people that are excellent at turning things into processes that can work with you, and they can just take what you feel like is a dark art, and it probably is, probably more than we know. But we take, whatever would be considered a sort of like a dark art or a specialization or a Jedi skill, and we turn that into a teachable thing, teachable, trackable, repeatable type thing, right? And then Beastmode already gave you extensions of business that are really interesting, that could benefit from maybe a little bit less critical Jedi-like training, but some still probably, right? But turning, whether it's that less technical, less difficult audience, or whether it's your full thing, I always believe, think about this, right? They launch these rockets. That's a Jedi trick, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes on there, but they've got it into a process. We are not doing rocket launching, right? We're talking about the difficulty of it being physical paper, But I'm guessing it's the same forms, right? The same things that make it a pain also make it maybe repeatable, right? So anyway, could we start with, documenting and workflowing your process using existing technologies that are cheap and off the shelf kind of situation, number one. Number two, I think the second and the easiest extension is not to build a website. I think that could be in the mix though, and it could be slowly built over time, probably out of cash. But it's what Beastmode was saying about the school thing and all that. I think that's like phase two. I think phase one is doing a great job with what you've got, maybe building more of a sales engine and marketing engine as well, because we want to make sure that even the sales part of this is somewhat repeatable, because if not, you're literally trying to do it all. But I think phase two might be what he's talking about. But then I think we can start having meetings and start having discussions over the months slowly of, are there parts of this that lend itself to being into a system? Because what if you're wrong? What if it's not that you're supposed to build a competitor to ZipRecruiter? What if you're supposed to build an application that states can tie into, that agencies can tie into, that employers can tie into, students and parents can use, social workers can use, that's more of a marketplace, that's more of a closed system, but has web elements. I'm just saying, maybe we document what are the critical features over many, many months that are differentiated and that are a little bit more proprietary. But we're doing that out of a place of expertise flowing. It's like a fountain springing out of your core competence, instead of, it feels like you're doing something where, because I think the web application is a good idea. I just don't know that I would go head to head with Indeed, because I was on Indeed. I spent 8.5 months out of a job because of COVID. Indeed has hourly jobs, right? Maybe it's not the location, not quite enough detail, probably, like you're saying. That's probably true, but it might be so close that you might struggle differentiating. And the things you talked about, like having a QR code on their front door and all that stuff, that's all like non-technical. That's all very much more like blocking and tackling, knocking on doors. You need like a sales force for that, right? You need people that are doing hand-to-hand combat. So anyway, I don't know. I think the web application idea is great. I mean, I haven't seen plans of what it does. Maybe you have them written down, but I feel like some of those can be like, okay, God told me in 2018 to start a business college, right? So, Beastmode always pushes me on that. He's so great, because he's a really awesome instigator, and he's always like, hey, what are we doing? And because he's just like a good guy to like light fires. He's incredible at that and a lot of things, actually. But like, and so in my mind, I'm like, okay, the things that I'm doing, what am I doing to build content and knowledge towards a future business college, right? Him and I had a discussion yesterday about this, actually. And so I don't know what that looks like. But I don't think the vision, if you're not like selling everything you have and giving it to your web developer and building an application tomorrow, I don't think you're missing God. I feel like we want to be really careful to double down on what we know can work and what's repeatable. And then let's start documenting, maybe with us, maybe even with us on the phone, what are some key features and ideas, and take it as a gradual thing where it's springing out of the well of your expertise and your experience and your visibility in the field versus purely an idea itself.
Yeah, that's what I'm terrified of. I'm afraid to put, then I feel like found that I can trust, because I talked to a few coders and they're like, oh, this is basically, they wanted to take the idea I had and apply that in a different field. And that's the way it is in the tech world. Everybody's a lot of coders, not a lot of necessarily ideas. And so I finally found a coder that I feel like I can trust. But now that since I didn't win any of the business, I'm going to have to, bootstrap myself. And I don't want to be, she has a full-time job, so she does it on the side, but I don't want to be, $5,000-$10,000 in the hole and then it not work out, or even worse, somebody just comes along and takes it and does it themselves. So that's the biggest that's the big, because I just came off of another business loss where the money wasn't the hard part. It was the year I spent building it and working 12, 15-hour days to end up with nothing other than I learned some stuff. Like I could have learned a lot and made 100 grams, like, you know what I mean? So, and it's not about all about the money, but you know, I'm a single parent. I've got, you know, a 9-year-old son. So like I have to make it, you know, I can't just, there isn't any other income.
I can tell you from experience, and I don't think it's an accident that you're on the phone with us, because I spent $125,000 in 6 years of my life. I wrote the best business specs they've ever seen. My family didn't see me on nights and weekends for 3 years. I'm exaggerating. I wasn't that abusive. But it was a commitment, and it completely and utterly failed. It was called To Honor Them. And I could right now tell you the story and you'd say, you know what? That should work. And it didn't work. And I'll tell you what it was. You could honor people who made a difference in your life. You have a coach, you had a volleyball coach, and she said things to you that really created confidence in your life. And there are things that your boss said one time that you've never forgotten, right? Or there's things that your mom or somebody said to you, or that encouraged you or built you, or that were there for you, and you want to thank them and you want to remember them and you want to do something special for them. And so what this website was the ability for you to do little honors that were gorgeous, and you could turn them into these beautiful wall hangings as well. But it was also free, so you could buy the wall hangings in these gorgeous frames. You got to pick your frame. It was all virtual. All this was done. We would help you create, we'd help you design the honor itself, so the digital honor or the physical honor, because it was one thing. And it was like these admirable qualities, all these categories you got to pick from. And so it would say, Susan is noble, honest, caring. It was like you could pick. And so it's like you didn't have to think of it because we thought of it. Mm-hmm. Right. And there's these 2 or 3 prompts, and then there were some things. My point is, very well done application, custom application that touches hearts. Because everybody I talked to said, you have to do this. People were like, this is going to catch fire. Didn't work, right? Even though I have evidence that it's a human instinct. I did a lot of research on human instincts about honoring. And there actually is a lot of, we want to thank people. We want to be verbal. We want to memorialize people. But it didn't work. And so my point is, you can have a novel idea with a lot of stuff behind it and have it fail swimmingly. So if you spend 10,000, probably mean, if you think you're going to spend 10,000, then, you should probably think you're going to spend 40,000, right? So can you afford to spend the next 24 months not building what works to spend 40,000 on something that will fail to zero in 90 days after launch, right? And if you can, that's great. But if you can't, then what if we quadruple? Maybe it's a slow version of quadruple down, but what if we find a way to spend a little bit of money, but maybe none, and we figure out a way, what are the stages if you quintuple your current business? What are those stages, right? Maybe number 1 is having someone shadow you and documenting what you do, every bit of it. Like, okay, what is the sales process? How do you find your leads? What does it look like? Where are those sources? How do you reach out to them? Number 2, when you're talking with the end client, what are the types of profiles that you're kind of good at and you kind of know there's a good audience for? What does that look like? Is there a guide? Like, are there questions that you always ask that could be turned into a little iPad app that you just have someone, teach them how to ask them, and those kinds of things. In that moment, are there HIPAA requirements where we should probably be encrypting that, or we should be recording the conversation? What kind of protections and documentation in that moment should we be looking at, as well as for coaching for that person? Maybe we should record it. Maybe that's a possibility. But if you're going to record, you have to get the parents to sign off on, hey, we're going to go through this process. Here's what it looks like. Okay, now you've got probably a 1-page contract you need to have the parents, to sign. So, you just think through, what does that process look like? And right now it might be Jedi mind tricks that are in your head, but I am just thinking it can be turned into a process. And then, so maybe there's, 7 core areas of the business, right? There's things that, like, the client conversation. How many conversations is that, right? We can turn that into a certain product. Like, number one, it's initial onboarding, right? This might even be like before obligation. This might be almost like a pre-sales call, right? So it's mom and dad and it's Johnny, and it's this pre-conversation. Here's the guide for that. And then, so anyway, it's plenty of work. But I think if anybody who tells me they can make 160K, which again, your lifestyle was abused by that. So 140, anybody tells me that 140 is possible and that it's kind of a tough thing to get into and it's specialized and it's easy to screw up, I'm like, wow, interesting. I wonder what 7 of those people look like, and then Beastmode's idea was cool because it's this other market, which is a little less hard, it sounds like. And you agreed that his idea was also valuable. So there's kind of a natural extension. Instead of you going into the web world, which you might, but instead of going, and by the way, there may be things that you develop in SharePoint or otherwise. And when I say develop, it's just like, it's not really development per se. It's pretty light development, but there might be aspects of that you say, you know what, this inspires me that a broader web application could really do all of this type situation. So anyway, that's a few thoughts that I have of tripling down on your core. Plan B is his thing. And then all the while you're documenting what you like and what the market needs to maybe do your web app.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so many things have now they have a new virtual policy, which I haven't really tapped into that to see what they're requiring. But, now it's possible that some of the service that I provide could be done, virtually, which that wasn't even an option before, to maybe scale it. Like I said, I haven't really looked into what is it that they require, because you have to jump through all their hoops, right? But that's the price of doing business with the state. And then I even thought about developing a program for private schools, because there are private schools out there that don't have these type of services, and a lot of the higher functioning students with autism, there's a big gap, so they don't get these type of services that could really benefit them. So I've thought about other ways to kind of expand on that, because I do want to be good with what's in my hand, right? I want to be a good steward with what's in my hand, but I am a very much forward thinker. So I don't want to, like I said, I've been doing this for 10 years. So I know I don't want to do that another 10 years necessarily, not in the way that I've been doing it. Because that's why I went and looked for another job, because I was so burnt out and I wasn't really serving them the way that I did in the beginning, because, I just worked myself to death, and my desire to really provide a quality service dropped. And so I feel like I wasn't really doing them the best service that I could, and that's important. So I think I've had a good break now, that I can come back with a refreshed mind and see, what I could do differently, how I could grow it, and at the same time be looking
Let me
at.
ask you a question. Would it be interesting? Could you, as a side thing, could you be a matchmaker without a website? So for example, you reach out to the regional VP for Walmart for North Texas and you say, how's it going in terms of sourcing, talent? And do you have a little bit of flexibility on some of your roles where people that are on the spectrum would be considered for certain roles? And I'm just wondering if hand-to-hand combat of having good conversations with senior executives in the region to start with, without a website, could be interesting for you. And then and you say, well, would you pay a commission if I found you those 10 people, or if I found 5 of those 10 that you need? If I found 5 of those 10, would you pay a commission for that? And is that, because that becomes a precursor to the website, right? Then you're basically doing a paper version or a human version or a handshake version without the website part.
Right.
What if you got the same money and you didn't have to have the website? Just an email list. Like, hey, Susan, do you need anybody else this month? Okay, cool. You need 3? Great. How'd it work out with Johnny last month? Oh, that's great. And it's like, now it's more of a relationship, and sure, we can do a website eventually, but right now you can just do it with, hand-to-hand combat, right? And I mean, because you can find salespeople. I mean, you can find without difficulty, competent inside salespeople who can help you eventually scale the outreach to people. But you're not wrong that the hottest thing in the news right now is people can't find people. You're right. So I feel like there's something there as well.
So then I have that pressure of, wow, what if I've missed the boat? What if it's going to take me builds? You know what I mean? So that's just one, or what if somebody else is now they're going to come up with a solution because now everybody sees the problem.
Don't play defense. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I mean, somebody else is going to plant corn, but I'm going to plant corn.
Right. Yeah.
And usually business is about execution. I mean, Apple was 5 years late to I'm reading, I'm doing an audiobook. I'm reading The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek right now. And he said that Apple was 5 years late to the MP3 player market. There was like Rio and Sony. I don't know who else he said. I was listening to it on the way on my business trip. And so don't worry about that. That is not something you're supposed to worry about.
But no, all that feedback's pretty helpful. Thank you.
I was just reminded whenever Howie made his comment, and you're concerned over there's this desperation in the market and this then Jacob, I believe it's Jacob planted and reaped a harvest in the middle of a famine and nobody else did. There's only one reason why. It's because he served God. He's the one. Everybody else is out there trying to do the same thing. And that is, to me, that is the number one differentiator in all of it. I mean, I used to be paralyzed thinking the same thing in business for over a decade, almost 15 years, because I would get these ideas that it's like, God, somebody else has a very similar idea. What is it? I don't see it. This market's already flooded. And it took me so long to realize the difference is that I gave you this idea and that I'm on your team and that's the difference. Sure, everybody else is out there doing the same product, same service, whatever. The difference is that I asked you to do it, so you're being obedient. Number 2 is that I'm on your team. I'm asking you to do it because my plan for you is for good and to prosper you, not to harm you. And I just remind God of who he is. Okay. And I'm doing it as I'm starting a nonprofit who showers neighbors and provides mobile services in a pandemic, and it's grown exponentially in a calendar year, so that's my take on it. But it does require, and I'm with Howie, if there's a way I can allow some sustainability because I can duplicate myself and generate some revenue over here and give me a window. Now, again, a lot of times we're looking for risk-free options with God, and that's not a thing. He requires a risk. So if we're trying to make it safe and secure, then that's also not going to work because it requires faith. It requires some level of risk. God, this doesn't look like it's going to work. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. I don't have this. I don't have that. And it requires that. That's what makes it a God idea and makes us depend on it. But at the same, it is smart that if I am able to generate some revenue at the same time, then yeah,
Right.
And I think there are so many ways to document and get creative in documentation. We did an episode, I think a month or two ago, where we talked about documentation and processes, and we spent the whole episode talking about it. One of the things that I do is I literally record myself doing the whatever it is, whether it's writing it down and I record it. And that way, at any point in time, if whoever's following me on that test needs to go look, you can go watch me do it, But again, for me, if I was having a documentation type where step 1, step 2, I would minimize it and say, these are your only answer choices. I would make it as cut and dry as I can so if I'm the one who says, whenever I fill out this form, these are the things I put in here, and these are the only variations that can go in this form. And so then I would just have that just sitting out to the side. You have this form that you're going to fill out as you're with this customer, and these are the only answer choices that are allowed to go in here. And so there's not a wrong answer, because they're all answers that you would put in there.
I bet you $100 that I can scan that form. Just give me a form. And the last step that you have to sign, we can use either Adobe or use DocuSign or one of their competitors, and we can digitally sign that with a mouse click, and it's your actual signature on the form, and then it gets printed, and they have no idea whether or not you hand signed it or not. $100.
Yeah, possibly. For most of them, well.
Or the last step could be a physical hand sign.
Yeah.
Fine. But then 98% of it's like.
Yeah, the only part is signing.
Generated, yeah.
Yeah, everything is drop and click. And then before you can be done, you had to print it, sign it, put it on your desk.
I mean, you should
or you hire a compliance person, and that's their only job is compliance. You hire a bunch of people who just do the work, and then you hire somebody who just sits there and is in compliance. Make sure these forms do not come back void. That's your job. There's plenty of businesses that run that way too.
I think even if you just talked about, Texas, but then you eventually did, maybe, a couple other states. I mean, there would be a lot of customization in each new state for sure. There would be, but I feel like this is probably available in most states. I feel like it's something that's interesting. It's a specialization. You're providing a good service that helps everybody. And, you get to tap into that as a result of providing the service. There's associations like autism associations. I mean, from a marketing perspective, there's a lot of ways to get your name out there.
Yeah, I have some ideas specifically for the autistic community of ways to market for that. And yeah, you're right. The service does have to be available in every state because it's a part of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Oh, cool.
So these services be provided to anyone with a documented disability. They're able to receive these services from the state. You got to go through their application service, etc. But yeah, it's like I said, it's so niche, it's so specialized. But the bigger names are the nonprofits, so it just makes me wonder, well, why is no one else, like, it's just the nonprofits that do it, so that are really big in the space.
What are you saying? Sorry.
Like Goodwill, Easter Seals, those are the big competitors as far as with me. It's usually the big nonprofits or individuals like me that provide the service. There's no real like for-profit companies that do this. And that makes me wonder, well, why?
Well, you're for profit. You may not be.
Right. Yeah, I'm for profit. Yeah.
My wife, this is so crazy. My wife helped our next door neighbor go through a divorce over the past 2+ years. And there's so much technical stuff with that paperwork. It's unbelievable. And my wife created like processes and spreadsheets that completely blew away this lawyer. And I thought she was going to hire my wife, actually, because she turned what was a very dark art into process. And I've seen this happen. And I think you should seriously consider having lunch with my wife just to talk. I mean, I don't know if she'd be open to that, something that's not in her wheel, I don't know if she's too busy with kids or whatever, but it could be interesting. I could offer it to her. But having somebody like that who can turn what you do into A, B, C, D, E, F, G means that you now have a business. Right now you have a consultancy.
That's really all. It's employment consulting is really what it is.
Yeah. But again, even rockets are launched by teams of people. So I don't know. I like Beastmode's idea too with this other side. I didn't understand it all the way, but I like the fact that there's adjacent markets that are available too. And then I like what I said, at least like maybe make 10 calls, like Walmart, Target, call your local Taco Bell, and just not, by the way, I don't mean just your local Taco Bell branch. I mean like the regional people for Taco Bell, the regional people for Domino's, the regional people for, and just say, do you have an appetite for having people headhunt for hourly for you and do matchmaking? Because I have a very meaningful clientele of people that do a good job but sometimes get overlooked. But also I have to pay my bills, so we have to charge something. Is there an appetite if we came up with a way of helping you? And
I like how you tied appetite with Taco Bell.
I must be hungry. Anyway, I know it's a lot to chew on. If you would like to talk to Jamie, my wife, let me know. No pressure. You don't have to decide right now. And once you say yes or no, or you don't have to say no, just don't respond. But if you say yes, I'll have to ask her, and it could be a no, because she has a full-time job. But I would call her almost a process engineer. But I think that kind of thing is good. I think you can build your web application. That's not a no. That's just a document it over time as you're paying your bills and growing.
Right. Something. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That all makes sense. I really appreciate y'all and y'all's feedback.
There's a way to be obedient to God and what he's asking you to do, but do things out of order. And so, and believe me, God asked me to do something, and it took almost 9 months before the fruition of what he asked me to do actually happened. And it doesn't mean because I wasn't doing it. I was spending 60, 70 hours a week doing what he asked me to do, but what he actually asked me to do took 9 months before it came to be. And so that's, yes, he may be asking you to do this one certain thing, but there's steps involved to get there. And as humans, we naturally, okay, here it is, let me just go. And there's, how he's talking about, there's ways to test the waters, there's ways to get feedback, there's ways to do this God's way that's appropriate. But yet I'm still being obedient to what he's asking me to do. And I guarantee you, if you ask him, he'll tell you step by step, because he's done it for me. But every step requires faith. Every step requires obedience. And then just sound business. I mean, again, I have a board of directors that helps me do it. It's not like I'm going on my own, and it's having conversations like this that maintain direction. But I mean, I'm with you.
That's actually not a bad point. I don't have any others to. I thought I was done, but I'm gonna just support what he said. Having a follow-up conversation isn't a terrible idea, because it's good to not be alone.
Yeah, and that's what I don't want to do. I don't want to make decisions my own, and then I could still fail miserably, right? And that's still a reality. But if I could at least get some wisdom, right? He tells us to seek out wisdom. So hopefully I don't make bad choices to crash and burn. But yeah, that's why I reached out to y'all. So I definitely want to, like I said, process this. And
well, we want to pray for you. So where it's going to take you, it's going to take you someplace it's never going to take me.
Right. Yeah, comparison, is a thief of joy.